I think people don't want a solution. I think they just want to complain about certain problems. Like they just want to be able to complain because you can have people who are struggling financially and they're spending their money stupidly. They're just buying things that they don't need, but they can't pay for rent. They can't pay for their debts. They're carrying credit card debt. And like I said, I don't think people want a solution. I think people are just going to be forced into it over time. Bitcoin's just going to get better. I think there's no way of avoiding Bitcoin at this point. I don't really think that I'm scared. I'm not scared of any of that kind of stuff. I don't really think that if somebody is going to complain about Bitcoin, if they don't understand it, that it's going to fail because of that. I think a very small portion of people can definitely carry us across the finish line. My personal goal, but with my content, I'm sure your goal is the same thing. With our content, what we're trying to do is we're trying to inform as many people as possible. So when we do get to the finish line, there's as many people who can become wealthy with us as possible. Like, for example, there are people who have bought more Bitcoin that I can imagine buying in my own life based on my content. Like there was a guy who I spoke to. He bought, I think it was 100 Bitcoin after watching my content, and it was just absolutely insane. I'm never going to be able to get 100 Bitcoin. That's not even something I can imagine. But the person who watched my content, he was able to benefit with 100 Bitcoin. To me, that's crazy. I think those people are going to be the ones that carry us across the finish line. The people who actually listen, the people who actually learn. Everybody else, I mean, they're uninformed. Their opinions really won't matter at a point. If your employer is paying you in Bitcoin, you don't have a choice. Either you get paid or you don't get paid. They find another employee. And that's just something that's going to happen. If people don't want to get paid in Bitcoin, they're just getting paid in an inferior money, like the dollar, for example. You can keep getting paid in the dollar, perfectly fine. If you don't want to fight for yourself, you're kind of putting yourself in this position where you're going to get worse off over time. If people don't want to interact with Bitcoin, I'm not worried about it because I know for a fact that there will be somebody who's willing to exchange Bitcoin for goods and services at some point in the future. I will be able to find someone, let's say, for example, worst case, if the dollar survives, there will definitely be someone who's willing to give me dollars in exchange for my Bitcoin at some point. Doesn't matter when, 10, 20, 100 years from now. If I'm alive, somebody will be willing to take my Bitcoin in exchange for dollars because Bitcoin is that finite good. Over time, I do think that people are going to change their minds. They're going to figure out what this thing is. They're going to realize that with Bitcoin, they can improve their lifestyle. They can improve their standard of living. So why would they want to continue saving in dollars? I think it'll just be people will just get it at some point. And if they don't, they're going to be forced into it. So I don't really see that as a problem. I think the one thing that really scares me about Bitcoin is the potential that it could become more and more centralized. Like the people who own Bitcoin today, they're probably not going to sell the majority of it for a very, very long time or ever. Let's say you have MicroStrategy, they have 500,000 Bitcoin. You have BlackRock, they have about 600,000 Bitcoin at the time of this recording, about 600,000. Those Bitcoin are never going to go back into the market. So what scares me is that the people at the bottom are going to be fighting for scraps. They're going to be basically fighting for nothing. They're going to be fighting for 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 satoshis, and that's all they'll be able to afford. And that's what really gets me, and that's what's going to impact people and make people not like Bitcoin, I guess, in a way. But I mean, those people are always going to be there. There's always going to be the people at the bottom. There's always going to be the people at the top. There's going to be people who own zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, and there's going to be other people who own 0.000001. And that's always going to happen. I don't think that's avoidable, but that's what scares me the most. I don't really think that people are going to continue to reject Bitcoin over time once they see where Bitcoin is going. Once Bitcoin is at $1 million, I think it'll open up a lot of eyes. Once Bitcoin is at $10 million, I think it'll open up a lot of eyes. Fidelity, the report that you're talking about, I think they predicted Bitcoin to go to $1 billion by 2040, which to me is just insane. People think that I'm crazy when I say Bitcoin's going to eventually go to $1 million. Fidelity, this massive institution, is telling you that Bitcoin is going to $1 billion, and you're still questioning it. Like at that point, if people are still questioning it, they kind of deserve to not have the Bitcoin that they should be getting. It goes back to the price. Bitcoin, you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. It's a free market. Exactly. You buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. If you're going to ignore it, then you're going to buy it later. I think there are some nuances there, of course, where let's say if somebody's not born yet, or if somebody's they're not going to be able to buy Bitcoin, of course. But the way that I see it, it's based on whenever you first discover Bitcoin and in the future. So let's say, for example, for me, I first really started looking at Bitcoin at around $3,000. My colleague told me about Bitcoin at around 3,000 or 4,000. I don't remember what the number was. 2020. I thought it was going to go down. So I personally bought Bitcoin at the price I deserved. I didn't get to buy at 3 or 4,000 because I hadn't done the education. Before that, there was no control. I had no control over, let's say when Bitcoin was a cent, 2 cents, 5 cents, 10 cents. I had no control over that. I had control at the point where I discovered Bitcoin at $3,000, $4,000, and I chose to ignore it. So today, people have this option to buy Bitcoin at 100K, and they're choosing to ignore it. Who can they blame for that? They're putting themselves in that position where they can't afford it. They're putting themselves in that position where they won't even be able to buy 100,000 Satoshis, for example. At some point, that 100,000 Satoshis is going to be a massive bag, but they're losing out on the opportunity because some of them have an ego. Some of them just don't want to. They think that it's worthless. They want to stick to the current financial system. So I think it'll be up to them, up to the people who are adopting it. It'll be up to them to actually adopt. It doesn't really worry me, to be honest. If it was in my hands, I would actually distribute as much Bitcoin as I could to as many people as possible. But I don't have enough Bitcoin to help everybody. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, that it's selflessness. A lot of what you just said, you can tell like that's who you are innately. I mean, a lot of it you can't help yourself. I mean, you're talking very selflessly, and it makes me think of Bitcoin being a humility test. I don't look at it as, it's not an IQ test, right? Like there's some of the smartest people in the world we know that are in Bitcoin. There's some of the least smartest in the world that are in Bitcoin. It's just humility. Like you said, when you see it, do you allow yourself to say, maybe there's something I'm missing here? And do you go in and put that work in? That's the only thing that separates people to understand. And again, it's not just Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a 4-letter word. I mean, it's not Bitcoin. It's sound money. Do I understand the system I am living in? Or am I just going to accept blindly that this is the way it's been, so I'm just going to continue this way? That to me is just, wild. And in saying that too, your point of, life, the beautiful part of someone that's born 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they will be in a world that has much less societal decay, right? And hopefully less homelessness. And like these things will happen because we're on a Bitcoin standard. Maybe they don't have the Bitcoin someone got when they were alive in 2015, if they're born in 2035, but guess what? You get the benefits, just like we said, America, like 3% of the guys won the Revolutionary War, but then you got the Bill of Rights. You got all these things and you didn't do anything. So that's the world. I think that it doesn't get talked about enough in a way. We don't kind of project that into the world enough. Like, why are we fighting for it? And we get lumped into that crypto crowd of, like you alluded to earlier, of like, this pumping your bags and like, what is it? So anyway, I would love for you to kind of touch on any of that, but I'd also love for you to, we talked these high numbers. How do you fight unit cost bias when people are talking to you or asking you about that?
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on. We'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.